Welcome everyone to the MMA Vivisection with me, Zane Simon, and my co-host Connor Rebish. We are here for UFC 223 in Brooklyn, New York. Max Holloway versus Khabib Nurmagomedov for the UFC Lightweight Intercontinental Interim Championship.
Yeah, I can't wait until we get to a point where we start adding more and more and more adjectives to our titles. Interim is no longer enough. Now we need the interim super championship. We need the silver interim championship. Come on, learn from boxing, Dana. You're supposed to be a businessman. Start tacking on those fucking adjectives.
Of course, joined, as always, by Connor Rebish right there.
Hi.
And yeah, I remember too, there was a point when people were arguing that like, oh, the UFC needs to create like regional champions of like, you know, North America, Brazil, Asia, Europe, whatever. And then there's always people saying, let's make a belt every 5 pounds. And
sounds like a great idea. Sounds like that'll be a sport that is very easy to keep track of.
Totally. There's already not a point where we're already not at a point where there are far too many fighters and everybody's just like, fuck, I don't know who these people are or give a shit.
Who are these people who want more weight classes? How much have they been paid by the promoters? Because that is the only people that are really served by it.
Yeah, I'll always remember. And this is the best example I can give. Was a dude came over to install my oven once and found out that I was a sports writer. He was doing the work and installing it. He's like, and working for Bloody Elbow and all that. And he was like, oh man, yeah, I'm a big MMA fan. I used to watch it a ton. And there's a big card coming up, right? And it's like, this was UFC 200 with like Brock Lesnar and Mark Hunt and who was at the top of that? Was that that was Miesha Tate
yeah.
Holly Holm? Mm-hmm. Was that fight?
No, that was Miesha Tate and Nunes.
Okay. And he was like, yeah, so Brock Lesnar's coming back to fight Frank Mir, right? This is like, this is about the level of engagement that we need to understand.
How are there enough hardcore fans that online in the MMA community is just like a ceaseless, incomprehensible argument? Like, there's enough passionate people that there is a sizable, thriving, and very angry community. And yet, every single person you meet in actual life who says they're a big fan of MMA thinks Chuck Liddell is still the light heavyweight champion.
Yeah.
It's not their fault either, right? There are a lot of boxing fans who could not fucking tell you who the middleweight champ is right now, but could tell you who he was in the 80s, you know?
Or who can't remember one heavyweight since Mike Tyson. And that's right. Just, like, that's all they know. Like, oh yeah, Mike Tyson was great. And who's the heavyweight champion right now?
If you're lucky, they just heard of Anthony Joshua after last weekend.
If you're lucky, they're like, oh, isn't one of those big Russians champion?
Yeah. Basically, they'll only be 10 years out of date.
Yeah.
Yeah, they'll think it's Vitaly too. Yeah, it's just because it's too busy. There's too much stuff. You can't follow it the way you can other sports. You don't get to just pick a team and then see them play 9 times a week. It doesn't work that well.
Yeah. So
anyway, aren't we excited about this card?
This card, we're still really excited for it. Intercontinental title or no.
Yeah.
And honestly, like, okay, I know I went on a whole screed on this on Twitter and all that, and you probably saw it there too, where people were like immediately like, oh, I like this Max Holloway fight better than Tony Ferguson. And my immediate thought is like, look, this is a great pivot. This is this is the best possible pivot the UFC could make in this situation.
Yeah.
But I can't pretend it's a better fight. It's a cool fight, but it's not a better fight.
Yeah, I understand that the compulsion to say that. I said something almost pretty similar on Heavy Hands this week, but really it was like, as an analyst, as a hardcore fan, I'm happy to be thinking about something else.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've already put a lot of mental energy into a fight that has now 4 times failed to actually happen.
Yeah.
So I'm cool with something new, but yeah, it fucking sucks. We don't get to see Ferguson Khabib again. Max Holloway is about as good as they could have possibly done to put in a reasonable replacement.
Yeah. Otherwise, we get Rose versus Joanna 2, which I'm totally thrilled for and excited for. And we've got Renato Moicano versus Calvin Kattar, which honestly, that's like one of those five. There are like 5 fights right at the bottom of the top 15 at featherweight that I'm just like, I need to see these people fight. And, you know, it pretty much involves Renato Moicano, Calvin Kattar, Miles Jury, and Zabit Magomed-Sharapov, and, you know, a couple other people where I'm just like, I don't care how you match these people up, but I need to see it happen. And so Kattar versus Moicano, I'm happy with that. Chiesa versus Pettis, Iaquinta versus Paul Felder, just a fun pay-per-view card. And then a whole bunch of fights underneath that all have interest in one way or another.
All either promise action or are obviously relevant.
So we're going to dive right into the bottom. Zabit Magomed-Sharapov versus Kyle Bochniak, featherweight bout. And Connor, what are your thoughts on this?
I like this matchup. I appreciate that they are bringing Zabit along carefully. Even though he hasn't had any easy fights yet, he looks like a next level kind of talent. You know, he has like that vibe you would get from the early Anthony Pettis career where you're like, whoa, this guy can just do things easily that other people take years and years and years to learn. His movements are very practiced. He looks, more than anything, he looks absurdly calm in his fights and just selects techniques as if he is rifling through like a stack of magazines. And Kyle Bochniak is like not in any way a step up from the likes of Shayma Moraes, other than maybe that he has a recent win, that he's been more active. He is a step up. He's on that Shayma Moraes level, I think, relative to guys like Mike Santiago, especially considering his last win in which he looked really, really good. And that's what I like. Bochniak has now kind of turned the corner. We've finally seen a performance out of him that seems to reflect the best of what he's capable of. He's got speed, he's got timing, and he can control the pace of a fight. That's what he did so well against Brandon Davis. If he had fought that last bout at Davis's pace, he would have lost for sure. But he kept it from happening. He maintained his distance. He kind of lulled Davis to sleep by slowing the pace and then surprised him every now and then with a really big, meaningful shot. And I can see that kind of approach being effective against Zabit. I'm interested to see how he adapts to it, because it's not something I've seen him face before. I'm still confident that he's going to win it. We've seen Zabit now a lot on the ground, but when somebody is fighting him off the back foot, he is actually a very good, long, rangy boxer as well, and a capable kicker. So I think we'll be once again impressed by Zabit, but I think that Bochniak is a perfectly acceptable opponent to test him and keep him sharp until we finally start seeing him in some really high-profile matchups. So I'm going with Magomed-Sharapov, and I think I'll take him by, I don't know, a decision.
I think I'll probably pick submission here, just to tease my pick out ahead of time that I'm picking Zabit as well. I mean, I do like that Bochniak's never been stopped. That's a real credit to him. But he's also never really faced a good submission threat of any significance. Like, he's been a good athlete. He's an okay wrestler. He's not a great grappler of any note. And his kickboxing, I mean, that Brandon Davis win, like you say, that was a real corner-turning performance. Especially, like, I am totally comfortable saying he won that fight, but he also got, like, slightly outstruck by the numbers in that fight, where, you know, it was like 33-38, and it was just getting the fight slowed down to a pace where his bigger, more meaningful seeming shots were enough to just make, you know, squeak out narrow rounds against somebody who absolutely would have overwhelmed him with volume if he'd just stepped in and gone shot for shot with him. But yeah, with Zabit, the command Zabit has of range and his ability to dictate pace himself and to dictate how and what he can do from range, and like, there's no value to slowing down a fight with Zabit Magomed-Sharapov, because he's too creative, and he unlike Davis, has defense. He can actually slip punches and will actually. I mean, Davis does too, but his defense is all based around being really active. You know, it's kind of like kind of has defense in the same way that oh God, who's the Tiger Schulman guy who just got knocked out by Calvin Kattar? You're muted. Oh, you're.
No, I turned my camera off. Shane Burgos.
Shane Burgos.
Sorry.
He kind of has defense in the same way that Shane Burgos has defense. Like when Shane Burgos is just walking forward, he's incredibly hittable. And when he's actually like in the middle of a combination, he slips and rolls and all that. But it's all based on how active he is and how much he's putting out. Davis is a lot the same, I think, in that way. Mm-hmm. Zabit is not. Like, you know, we could see in the Shaman Moraes fight, Moraes was going after him, throwing heavy shots at him, and they were almost all missing.
He's very good defensively, and I will still rewatch. It was one sequence, but the counter uppercut he hit on Mike Rodriguez in his UFC debut. Santiago, sorry. Backed up against the fence, slips to the outside, short uppercut, pivots away. He's nowhere to be found. I mean, that is a defensively capable. That looks like legitimately good boxing by boxing standards. Yeah,
and it's the kind of thing that means that Bochniak would have to come up with a whole nother level that we haven't seen. Like he did against Davis. He came out with a slow pace, an in and out, high movement, take advantage of his athleticism game. But the fact that he's also just not been a great wrestler leads me to think that what's really going to happen is that Zabit will be happy to pick him off and pot shot with crafty, weird pull, something out of your hat strikes from long range. And then sooner or later, they're going to get tangled up on the ground and Zabit's going to put some dominance together in a way that eventually makes Bochniak tap out.
Yeah, or even on the feet, like Zabit's defensive ability, his sense of range. I could see him reading those repeated right hand leads from Bochniak much better than Davis did, and catching him with some serious counters as the fight goes on.
Because every time, like I've had questions about Zabit every time he's fought, and it seems like each fight he's going through is answering those. It's like,
he surpasses your expectations of how he might answer them.
It's like, oh, well, how's he going to take body shots with his long, lanky frame and seeming not the most athletic, like strongest guy in the world build? Mm-hmm. And then you see him like getting kicked in the body by Shaman Moraes and just catching it and pulling him to the ground and just running over him. It's like, okay, you know what? Whatever. It's fine.
It's super impressive.
Odds on this, Zabit is a prohibitive favorite. Opened at minus 530, dropped down to minus 742, and has stayed even at about minus 809. And Bochniak opened at plus 350, adjusted up to plus 545, moved up and down a tiny bit, but is currently at plus 528. And
I mean, I get it. There's no reason for it, really. I mean, don't bet on this fight.
No. Those odds are the product of everybody looking at this and just being like, Bochniak's pretty decent, but I don't see how he's going to win this.
Yeah.
His game just is not deep enough. All right, that brings us to a light heavyweight bout, Devin Clark, Mike Rodriguez. And, I mean, you kind of said it, you teased it out as we were getting ready to get going. And this is kind of like the least interesting fight on the card. Mm-hmm. And it's still an interesting fight. I mean, Rodriguez and Clark, they're both good athletes. They're both pretty raw talents. And that kind of tends to mean that they're probably not going to be, they're good enough athletes to hurt each other and not technical enough to stay safe. So it should lean towards a good fight because of it. I'm probably, and I hate doing this, I'm probably picking Devin Clark. Rodriguez is unquestionably the sharper kickboxer, and he has a really nice flying knee that he goes to over like every fight. It's not just like he pulled it out on that Dana White's Tuesday Night Contender Series, obviously, but you can see it in his other fights too. He really loves to throw it. And there's every chance that he catches Clark cold coming in, because Clark loves to have his chin up, tends to throw both hands out when he's chasing people down.
Yeah.
Really just wide open defensively as he's pursuing aggressively. But Rodriguez doesn't look like he's got more than one layer of takedown defense. And that worked for him on Dana White's Tuesday Night Contender Series in a fight that he otherwise, I mean, he didn't really get anything done other than that flying knee. That was all he needed. But that was really he stuffed a takedown through a flying knee. That was it. And watching him in other bouts regionally, they've tended to be a lot messier. And when he's gotten engaged, like locked down in the clinch and things like that, he's gotten pulled to the ground a lot, especially from like a strong double leg against the fence, somebody who's got both hands around his waist. And Clark's style of pursuit and his just bull running into people and pushing them back pretty much leads him to takedowns against the fence like that. So I kind of feel like he's going to take advantage of the biggest gap in Mike Rodriguez's defense to get this fight to the ground a lot, after which, like I say, Rodriguez could dial him up on the feet and knock him out, but I think it's going to be a test of his gas tank, and mostly a guy who's had mostly first-round finishes. I'm more willing to trust Devin Clark to take this fight late and kind of just control it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Devin Clark getting beaten up and choked out by Jan Blachowicz isn't a great look, but now we know that Jan Blachowicz is the best boxer in the UFC. So, so that does change it a little bit. I can't really add anything to what you said. Devin Clark, he looks super stiff. He has a touch of the Derek Brunson in him, where it's like he's trying really, really hard, but with no fluidity, no relaxation, no ability to comprehend and then react and adjust to something coming back at him. The chin is way up when he strikes. There are definitely openings there for Rodriguez, but I just don't think Rodriguez is a good enough wrestler. And Clark is athletic enough that he'll probably get the kind of fight he wants. He'll probably be able to push Rodriguez back. He'll end up in some weird tie-ups. I think he has more resources in that kind of fight than Rodriguez does. And I don't think Rodriguez really pushes enough of a pace with his striking to consistently put a guy like Clark in the corner and pick him apart. Like it no joke, Blachowicz' combinations really did have a lot to do with how he was able to mess with Clark as that fight went on. And Rodriguez is kind of like one and done kickboxing most of the time. So yeah, I like Clark too.
Oh man, I'm just reading a live report that Conor McGregor, you saw the whole thing with Conor McGregor storming Barclays, right?
Yeah, he's like throwing chairs around and shit back in the dressing rooms.
And apparently, they threw a chair, like, they got into like a parking garage or something where a van with fighters was leaving and were throwing all sorts of shit around. Apparently they threw a chair through a van window and cut Chiesa's arm.
Seriously?
Yeah, seriously.
Well, we were all 13 once, Zane.
Yeah, I mean, fuck it. Like, if you're gonna work a pro wrestling angle, if you're gonna have like, oh, I don't think Conor McGregor's gonna be here. Oh my God, Conor McGregor, what's he doing in the building? He's got a chair. Like, if you're gonna do that, don't fucking hurt your talent doing it. Jesus Christ.
Well, how much control does the UFC have over Conor McGregor that they could orchestrate something like this? Like, if it's up to Conor McGregor to orchestrate it, there's no doubt shit like that's gonna happen. The man thought these guys pull out more than I do with my dick was a great tweet. So, I mean, there's not as much of a barrier between the thought and the action with Conor McGregor as there might be for the promoters.
Yeah, I kind of feel like, I think the UFC is probably like, okay, we're just gonna say Conor McGregor's not gonna be there, and we know he's not gonna be there. And McGregor was like, I'm gonna make a big show out of this. And like, I'm sure it wasn't that orchestrated, but still, if you're gonna do the whole like pro wrestling, let's play it off angle, and you're not gonna have him like escorted there and do a big pageantry, like
it should be more orchestrated.
Yeah, if you're not gonna orchestrate it, you're just gonna get stupid bullshit like this.
Because then you let Conor McGregor decide what happens. It's not a good idea.
All right, odds. Anyway, Devin Clark and Mike Rodriguez are basically dead even in the odds. Clark opening at minus 120, adjusting up and down to minus 118 or so, then slowly moving up to minus 107 right before the fight here. And Rodriguez opening at minus 120 as well, adjusting up and down to minus 105, and just jumped up to plus 101 in the last day or so. So Rodriguez suddenly riding from dead even to barely an underdog, which I'm fine with. And I'm fine with it being dead even too, because Rodriguez is clearly the more capable striker and the more dynamic striker, and Clark is there to be hit and hurt and has been knocked out by dudes like Alex Nicholson. So it's not like it takes a world beater to hurt him. All right, that takes us to a women's flyweight bout. Beck Rawlings, Ashlee Evans-Smith. It's you.
I revise and say that this is actually the worst fight on the card.
Well, I mean, this unquestionably, technically, this is the worst fight on the card. Yeah. But I'm also interested in it. So, like,
no, I'm not.
You're not. No. I'm always interested to see how Beck Rawlings can lose. So,
yeah, I guess it's more fun. Well, see, the thing is, I've lost interest in that game because it was supposed to happen against Sohee Ham, and she won. So it's no longer any fun when the scorecards I want to see don't even go the way they should. I don't know about this one. You know, these are two fighters who are clearly making efforts to evolve and adapt their styles, but who are having very, very mixed results. Ashlee Evans-Smith has become like a bad kickboxer in more recent fights. And then, like, when she does wrestle, she's developing this basically because women's MMA, and particularly fighters who at least at one time were like women's bantamweights. I guess Rawlings was a strawweight.
Yeah.
This is like old men's MMA. And so, like, now Ashlee Evans-Smith is like a much worse Josh Koscheck. Whereas, like, now she's working her striking, and now there's no connection whatsoever between those skills and the wrestling skills, which actually constitute her base skill set. So she's just
fair, though, there's never been any connection between any part of Ashlee Evans-Smith's game and her wrestling. Even when she came up as like a good wrestler, it was always like, you don't really get to wrestling a lot, do you?
Sure, yeah, that's true. But now it looks like she fancies striking more than she used to.
Yes, now it looks like she has a plan of how not to wrestle.
Yes, exactly. And Beck Rawlings she has become a markedly better boxer, but she's still very slow, and so she's kind of traded the former reckless aggression where she could just never say no to an opportunity to attack for a more reserved kind of style of like counterpunching, which she doesn't seem like she's perfectly physically capable of. So it sucks, Phil. It sucks. I'm gonna go with Beck Rawlings.
Ha, sucker.
Yeah, I mean, I think it'll be close no matter what happens, because I really don't think either of these ladies has what it takes to impose themselves on an opponent of each other's caliber. Rawlings is at least good enough with distance management that if Evans-Smith does get the idea to wrestle her, I think Rawlings can probably end up at least in the clinch and shut her down a bit. And if it's a boxing match, then it's Evans-Smith who is like maybe... Yeah, the slightly faster, more athletically conditioned fighter versus Beck Rawlings, who is technically better, but athletically worse. So I'm going to take Beck Rawlings in what I expect to be an abysmal fight to watch.
I expect Beck Rawlings to win the first round of this. The big problem for her is that she's built this very athletic, very high movement, very like in and out boxing style of like...
It's Phil Davis all over again. Zane.
Yeah, but she's really like, unlike Phil Davis, who actually has the athleticism to carry that style for multiple rounds, even if it's never suited him. Rawlings just gets really tired from it and then just devolves like progressively round by round. And the bigger thing is that she's never beat anyone stronger than her.
Yeah.
That's really it. Like, anybody who can compete with her athletically beats her. And
but will Evans-Smith try to do that? That's the question for me.
She will.
Okay. I hope so.
There's no guarantees. There's no guarantees that Evans-Smith won't just lose a slow and progressively sloppier kickboxing match. But I think at some point she will try and get to the clinch where she can just overpower Bec Rawlings, who, you know, like Jessie Jess overpowered Bec Rawlings. She swept her, actually. Bec Rawlings got the takedown, but Jessica Rose Clark swept her and then, like, out-athleted her. And Jessie Rose Clark is nobody's idea of a great athlete.
She also took her down outright, if I recall. Yeah. She hit her with a reactive shot at one point. She just kind of had her way with her.
So I think that just by value of being stronger, Evans-Smith will probably win this fight.
Yeah, that sounds like a good read to me.
Odds on the fight. There it is. Ashlee Evans-Smith is a much bigger favorite than she should be. Opened at -230, adjusted up to -192, and has stayed more or less stable. They're currently at -197. Rawlings opened at +170, adjusted up and down to +163, and has gone up and down a bit there, currently at +162. Honestly, these women should be ±100 at best. Like, they are both I will find a way to lose fighters.
They should both be +100.
Both be +100, yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty much. All right. Next up, we've got God damn it, I'm getting lost here. Alex Caceres versus Artem Lobov, featherweight bout, final fight pass bout.
Don't get lost just before the main event, Zane.
I know.
The one we've all been waiting for.
I want to talk about people who find a way to lose fights. This is what, like, watching tape again. I remember watching tape on Alex Caceres before the Guan Wong fight. And it's just like, Alex Caceres is absolutely going to find a way to lose this fight, isn't he?
Sure did.
And man, didn't he. I think I've finally learned my lesson, though, on Artem Lobov, and I'm just not picking him. He could absolutely beat Alex Caceres here because Alex Caceres will just engage Lobov in this exact kind of slow-paced, pick your moments to jump in and out kickboxing match that Lobov does his best in to, you know, do his pale imitation of Conor McGregor's pressure counter style. But the palest imitation, in fact.
Not too pale. I mean, really, like, if Lobov had longer arms, faster, like
if he was just a better athlete in general.
Phil McKenzie and I were cracking ourselves up just thinking of how both Lobov and Conor McGregor came out for fights against Diaz-esque fighters with exactly the same game plan. When Lobov fought Chris Avila, he just did exactly what Conor McGregor did to Nate Diaz in the rematch. So it's a working skill set.
It is. It's a working skill set. And it could be enough to beat Alex Caceres, who is a much better wrestler and grappler, but is really happy to just kind of dance around and throw weird, awkward strikes and be goofy and get hit really hard. That's just kind of something he's happy to do. It's like, you know, he's evasive and he has some good footwork and good movement and all that, but you can't just kind of constantly be that guy in a fight with that many variables. Like, you are just gonna evade yourself right into a head kick or into a right hand, and he also tends to not be evasive when he's leaping in for a left hand like he loves to do over and over and over again. That said, the big thing for me picking Caceres is head kicks. Honestly, Caceres has a very athletic, dynamic, unpredictable kicking game, and Lobov loves to just walk forward with his hands down and right into kicks, which, like, even against Andre Fili, where Lobov eventually, you know, steered that fight in moments where he could get Fili backed up and pressure him, and Fili was able to just, you know, then out wrestle him easily. but even doing that early on, he walked right into a head kick that almost knocked him out. And Caceres is a more unpredictable and more dynamic striker than Felice.
Yeah. Dynamic is one way of putting it, because Caceres is ADHD personified.
Yeah.
Andre Fili is always going to be a better fighter than Alex Caceres, and it's not because he's like a much better athlete or any of the things we usually measure fighting ability by. It is truly because Andre Fili can do the one thing Alex Caceres can't, and that is stick to a fucking plan.
Yep.
That is like come into the fight with an idea of what's the best and surest way of winning, and to do that for 15 minutes.
Yep.
And Caceres just does whatever he feels like in the moment, which too often against either very clever or very determined opponents means he ends up doing whatever his opponent wants him to do. And I think that's why Artem Lobov is going to beat him, because
it could easily happen.
Caceres could absolutely focus on reactive takedowns or forcing Lobov to the clinch and just wrenching him to the floor and then just crawl all over him on the ground. He's a substantially better grappler on a good day and a much better wrestler. But I don't think he'll do it, because I think he's going to want to try to have fun and strike with Lobov. And Lobov has two things that Caceres is not very good at defending against: hard, low kicks and counter combinations. And Caceres, in moments, Caceres is really a legit fighter. It's just that he has a lot of skills. What did I say? Phil and I were talking about this just last night. We talked about this matchup, and I was saying that Caceres is a fighter who he's read a lot of chapters, a lot of first chapters in various skill sets, but he's never finished a book. He just doesn't have the depth to like fully understand, where do I go after I get to this position? What's the best thing to do from here? It's like, okay, maybe I'll jump to this new idea. Maybe I'll jump to this new idea. And so he gets caught by surprise a lot, where he's just kind of in his head, he seems to be just thinking of what he's going to do next, what would be cool, what would be fun. Meanwhile, his opponent's having a fight with him. And so he just gets totally surprised. He's like, oh, that was rude. I thought we were having a fun sparring match where we each get to try out whatever we want. And say what you will about Artem Lobov, he does not approach fights as if they're sparring matches. He is a seasoned fighter's fighter. And I think that's going to be what it takes to win. So I'm taking
it could easily happen. I mean, Caceres is exactly the kind of guy who will come in to lose to Artem Lobov.
Yep, it's going to be awesome.
I just think that there's just an athletic plateau that Lobov clearly does not rise above, and Caceres may just be purely that.
It is like Caceres has all the potential, but just merely by picking up like 30% of what Conor McGregor can do, Lobov may still be able to beat him. What does that say about Alex Caceres?
The other thing I got to say, though, in reference to your breakdown there, is the amazingly ironic Bruce Lee quote: "I fear not the man who has practiced 10,000 kicks once, but I fear the man who has practiced one kick 10,000 times."
Yeah.
Bruce Leroy is totally the man who has practiced 10,000 kicks once.
Yeah, he is, instead of a Bruce Lee devotee, he's a devotee of Bruce Lee movies.
Yes.
It's like, I've learned the choreography for this fight scene, but it never like this grasp of how a fight flows and works.
Which is hilarious. All right. Caceres is the favorite at the moment. Opened at -170, adjusted up and down to -130, and has slowly slid out to -148. Artem Lobov opened at +130, adjusted down to -122, and has risen slowly up to +123. So I don't have any problem with that, honestly. I mean, I think Caceres either guy being an underdog or being the favorite here would be fine, just as long as the odds are as close as can be, because much like Beck Rawlings and Ashlee Evans-Smith, these are two fighters who are excellent at snatching defeat from the jaws of victory. And that brings us to our first fight on the Fox Sports 1 card, Evan Dunham, Olivier Aubin-Mercier, and that's you.
Sorry, I keep turning off my camera and microphone both at the same time. Okay.
You can leave the camera off.
Okay. All right, Zane. All right. I'll get you back later. Give me 30 minutes to think of a comeback. I really like this matchup. People who know me will know I really like Evan Dunham. And that's a big part of it. Evan Dunham is a supremely skilled fighter. He is very calm. He has the bearing of a very experienced veteran. He is dangerous and persistent, and he's all these great things, and he's just really, really slow and just not very athletic in any sense. You could say he's strong. I think he has a wiry strength about him, but most of the things we tend to associate with athletic ability doesn't have them. And so that's like exactly the kind of fighter I tend to go for. And against Olivier Aubin-Mercier, it is very hard to say how far Aubin-Mercier might actually be able to take his striking game, because there have been glimmers of real ability, and then there have been long stretches of sort of aimlessness where he almost looks, he has a little bit of what we just talked about Caceres having, where it's like he's still so much in the process of learning this new foreign aspect of the game that he doesn't really seem to treat it seriously in the fights. Like he doesn't.
Yeah.
He doesn't.
He seems like he's really trying to work on his kickboxing in the ring, which is admirable. But you've been fighting since 2011. It's been 6 years now. At some point, you've got to stop working on your kickboxing in the ring and actually be like a competent, fully rounded fighter.
Right. Where before I would look at OAM and I'd say like, okay, he's getting some work in. He's sharpening these skills. That's fine. That's what fighters should do. At this point, I'm like, oh, is this just the way he strikes?
Yeah.
Where he just doesn't seem to have a sense of urgency. He doesn't seem to treat it seriously as like, oh, when I do this, the other guy's trying to knock my head off for doing this to him. He doesn't have that focus that you would like to see. And Dunham does, which is like why I think this is a really interesting matchup. It's eminently possible that Aubin-Mercier can just out wrestle and out grapple Evan Dunham. But Dunham is really good in the clinch. I think he's an underrated wrestler in general, but he's very effective in the clinch. He throws a lot of volume. Even when he gets tired, like a pro, like somebody who takes the battle seriously, he continues pushing a pace, keeping his volume out there and continuing to work. I don't know. Like something just tells me that Dunham might be able to get this. Something just tells me. Like Tony Martin had an okay time against Olivier Aubin-Mercier, and he's even slower than Evan Dunham and throws a lot less. More power, but throws a lot less. And I don't know. Like I'll just go for it, I guess. I'm feeling compelled to pick Evan Dunham. I think it'll be a very close fight, but I think Dunham might be able to get it.
Yeah, I gotta kind of agree. I mean, I came in thinking, oh, I'll pick Olivier Aubin-Mercier, and there is a certain sense of like, for Evan Dunham, there is like this good of athlete beats you. You know, you look back at his record: Edson Barboza, Donald Cerrone, RDA, TJ Grant, Melvin Gillard, Sean Shirk, like all really athletic, high-level fighters. And Aubin-Mercier is definitely that athletic. He's definitely got that kind of power and speed and ability to cover distance and, all that to him. But he's also he fights like a much less experienced fighter than any of those fighters too. So it's sort of, you're like, well, you've got the same level of capability or the level of potential, but not the technical proficiency necessarily. And he has it on the ground, and he has it with his wrestling and grappling game. But Dunham has only been submitted once, ever. You know, his only submission loss is to Donald Cerrone I think from Cerrone's back, or maybe Cerrone hooked that up. It was a triangle choke, but I can't remember how Cerrone hooked that up. Now it was like Cerrone came out and like it was one of Don Cerrone's better performances, but I'd have to
Yeah, it was like somebody told him, "Hey, Dunham's really slow, so you don't have to be a slow starter this time," and he just ran through him.
Yeah, and it was kind of weird. But otherwise, like that's Dunham's only submission loss. And
meanwhile, some notable wins that are relevant to Aubin-Mercier's skill set: Gleison Tebow, Nick Lentz.
Yeah, exactly. Tyson Griffin, even going way back, although Griffin's a lot smaller, clearly.
But still, but taking a split over Tebow is no joke.
Yeah, or even Rodrigo Dam is like, reasonably powerful, reasonably athletic, one of those weird jiu-jitsu guys who only likes to brawl.
Yeah.
But it shows, like, to me, it shows there's a type of fighter that beats Dunham, and I'm just not sure that Mercier is it.
Yeah.
And if Dunham, like, his boxing, he's a higher output boxer. He's a much better boxer. His boxing technique breaks down as the fight goes on, as he gets more tired, but he doesn't throw less.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he is excellent at fighting tired. And Aubin-Mercier, at least as we saw in the Tony Martin fight, is not that excellent at fighting tired.
Mm-hmm.
In that fight, he just kind of got broke down. Mm-hmm. I think Dunham can do just enough to survive on the feet early if Mercier pushes to survive on the ground early, rather, if Mercier pushes a ground game. And if he doesn't, I think that Dunham wins early exchanges and then is just going to be the more conditioned fighter as the fight goes on. So, yeah, I'm willing to pick Evan Dunham here too. Didn't expect it, but there it is. Kind of like, I could see it looking a lot like the Beneil Dariush fight with a much less aggressive version of Dariush.
Right. Yeah, well, and like Dariush is like has the bearing of an experienced striker, knows how to also survive when he gets tired and kind of slow the pace. And Olivier Aubin-Mercier doesn't have that much control over the striking side of things.
Yeah. Odds on the fight. Dunham is the favorite at -150, opened at -180, adjusted up to -105, dropped back down, and has slowly trended down now to -143. Aubin-Mercier, the underdog, opened at +140, dropped way down to -123, and has climbed back up steadily to +119. I like that. I don't know that I would say Dunham should be a lot wider than that, but I like him as the favorite here.
Yeah, Dunham's always going to have a very hard ceiling athletically, but not mad at those odds.
Up next, Joe Lauzon, Chris Gruetzemacher. And I'm glad I get to talk about this fight first because this pisses me off so much. I was watching tape on Chris Gruetzemacher. I wasn't even watching tape on Joe Lauzon for this because I don't need to, frankly.
Don't want to rewatch any of those recent fights.
No. I was watching tape on Chris Gruetzemacher and it's like, I have to pick this guy? Really? This fucking dude? You kidding me?
Don't say that. Grits is cool. I like him.
I don't dislike him, but like that Davi Ramos fight was basically just him getting tossed around like a child all fight, and then Davi Ramos being like, "Oh wait, I should actually finish this guy."
Yeah, I guess I give Grits credit for performances like that because like Ramos was way better situated athletically than him, and
that's my point, is that he is like the very low end of what can cut it in the UFC as an athlete, and maybe not even what can cut it in the UFC as an athlete, frankly. He's not athletic at all.
But he has no quit in him, which is what makes him effective.
But he has no quit in him, and that is almost entirely the only reason I'm going to pick him to beat Joe Lauzon.
Yeah.
Because even at his best, Joe Lauzon has been a guy who has a round and a half in him before he falls apart.
Mm-hmm.
So even Joe Lauzon, unlikely to get knocked out by Chris Gruetzemacher, is likely to fade first. And so I'm basically picking the least athletic guy on the entire UFC roster to beat Joe Lauzon. Either just to knock him out in another sad, like, Clay Guida 2017 really performance, or to just outwork him as Lauzon gets tired and Gruetzemacher stays on him and punishes him down the stretch. I don't know. Makes me really fucking depressed and angry, but there you have it.
Welcome back to the MMA Depressed Us. Yeah, you know, I'll say this, like, Joe Lauzon is still, I'm sure has some quality performances left in him, purely because he's dangerous. Joe Lauzon is still what Joe Lauzon has always been, which is dangerous. But like, that's the one thing that the one ace up your sleeve that isn't likely to work against Chris Gruetzemacher, because he's super tough. That's really what he's best at. Is he is just tough as a nail, and knows it and fights like it. You know, keeps a pace, pushes his opponents, forces them to get into situations where they have to find out over and over how tough he is. They hit him, he doesn't go away, he keeps coming. And like, yeah, that's always been a bad thing that's always been something Joe Lauzon doesn't want to see in an opponent is, oh, they're insanely tough and they keep coming and they don't slow down. So it's just that now he's going to probably lose to a worse version of that same factor. But yeah, I'm with you. Can't add anything to it. Chris Gruetzemacher is just too tough, and Joe Lauzon is a worse version of the guy who has always gotten tired after a round. So
it's in a career stretching back 14 years now. This will unquestionably, and with 14 losses in those 14 years, this will unquestionably, without hesitation, be the worst loss of Joe Lauzon's career if he loses this.
Yeah. All great things must come to an end.
I know, but this would bum me out, and I'm picking it because it just...
you don't want to be happy, really.
I don't.
It's uncomfortable.
Yeah, all right. Odds on the fight. Gruetzemacher is an underdog still because people have a weird amount of faith. Opened at plus 175, dropped down to plus 136, and is currently trolling along at 146, basically stayed even. Joe Lauzon opened at minus 245, jumped up to minus 160, and is currently at minus 176. So, yeah, by skill, record, accomplishment, any other metric you want, Joe Lauzon absolutely should win this fight. But the dude who got insta cold cocked by Clay Guida, I'm not picking him.
Yeah. What more can you say?
Brings us to a flyweight bout. Ray Borg versus Brandon Moreno. And yeah, this is you.
Man. This is a tough matchup to parse, man. And it really comes down to, like, it's fairly clear that where each fighter's advantages lie, I think. What's not clear is what kind of fight they're going to have that's going to lead them to those advantages. Like, Brandon Moreno has had this spotty kickboxing style where, like, technically he has made great leaps and bounds since his time on The Ultimate Fighter, but has yet to, I don't know, he also kind of has this weird, like, lacking urgency. He has this too relaxed vibe sometimes. That was definitely the case in the fight with Pretty Tony the Younger, where he just couldn't turn it up and couldn't adjust, couldn't put any kind of pressure on Sergio Pettis, couldn't really do anything differently other than just, once he started to get picked apart, he stayed getting picked apart. The striking from Moreno, he seems most comfortable using that as like a counter to somebody who wants to wrestle him. And he'll strike them in moments. He'll find little openings between scrambles. Then he'll get off his really good shots. Or if you have, like, wild exchanges, he is pretty comfortable in those and always has been. And I imagine is probably just comfortable with better technique now. We'll roll with things. We'll throw combinations. We'll be pushed to a point where he refuses to back down and ends up being a pretty gritty in the pocket fighter. What Brandon Moreno we're going to see really seems to depend on how Ray Borg approaches him. Because if Ray comes and decides he wants to do a little work on his striking, something that has been steadily improving over recent years, if Ray Borg decides he wants to throw hands with Brandon Moreno, I think he might have a better time than if he just tries to grapple him. Like if he comes out faking the shot, if he tries to put pressure on Moreno and uses the threat of his base skill set, his grappling and his wrestling to set up his hands, I think that's a way for him to win this fight. If he comes out and gives Moreno lots of space and just basically tries to time Moreno with takedowns and that's it, Moreno seems tireless. He's exceptionally good at keeping a scramble going. And while Borg is an excellent scrambler, Borg also, he allows scrambles. That's the style he has. He's like a way more athletic Tim Elliott, where he's not comfortable when things are slowed down on the ground and when he's stuck in a single position. Even when he's in control, I think he's more comfortable when things are moving and he's picking openings and flowing. That's what he likes to do. And Moreno's really, really good in that kind of fight. Very difficult to lock him down in a position. I still think, like, I know he was losing every minute of the Dustin Ortiz fight up to the moment he got the knockout, but he was losing it very impressively because he was never, ever getting slowed down. And really, strategically, you could say Ortiz was kind of losing it because he was being made to work very, very hard to get any kind of wrestling success against Moreno. So what kind of game plan does Ray Borg come out with? What kind of changes might Moreno have made since the Sergio Pettis fight? Is he going to look as weirdly flat as he did in that fight? I don't know. I think I will take Ray Borg because I think he has improved really steadily, and his like lackluster performance was against Demetrius Johnson.
Yeah.
You know, like that was what it took for him to look kind of flat after all of this steady progression. And Moreno's lackluster performance was against Sergio Pettis. I know that's MMA math to an extent, but Borg is capable, I think, of putting enough pressure with strikes and mixing that with his takedown threat to have a similar effect on Moreno that Sergio Pettis did. Just a sort of multifaceted pressure so that Moreno, who might come in thinking he's going to be cute, he's going to flow with everything, he's going to find an opening to get the finish, ends up just reacting, and can't get anything off. So I think that's what Borg will do. I still have some faith in the game planning at Jackson Wink and the training of Brandon Gibson, so I'm going to pick Borg, but I don't know. I don't think I have a very good feel for how this one's going to play out.
Yeah, I think, I mean, it's a bit weird to me because I've been seeing like a lot of like Ray Borg is terrible kind of talk lately. Yeah.
Is Kyoji Horiguchi terrible? He lost just as badly to Demetrius Johnson.
I know, but I don't even know that it had anything to do with the Demetrius Johnson fight, but I think there's this sense that he's really only a wrestler or something, or really only a back take artist, and that's it, and hasn't evolved in any other way.
Where did they get that impression?
I don't know. I'm trying to figure it out. But like, it's not that long ago that he outstruck Jussier Formiga, who has been slowly becoming a much better kickboxer, and is still like basically beats everybody but the very, very elite in his division. Just beat Ben Wen, and Borg, like his biggest problem, and he even showed some improvement in this in the Demetrius Johnson fight, has always been, what was a big problem in the Jussier Formiga fight is that every time he wanted to throw his right hand, he had to throw his left hand first, and he tended to do this thing where he would like feint and like do this like really bobbing, very like, you never know when I'm going to jump in with the combination movement from outside, that actually he just did it to the point that you're like, okay, and you know what? This is actually just a rhythm now that I can just watch, and I know anytime you move out of this rhythm, you're going to be jumping in with the combination.
Yeah. Well, and also like the timing is made much easier when you can back it up with some anticipation. So if you always know what the guy's gonna throw, when he's gonna throw, it isn't so much of a problem.
Yeah. And in the Demetrius Johnson fight, he actually, like, you know, he threw a couple double right hands and he started breaking things up a little more. And to me, it was a clear show of progression, not a ton of progression, not enough to beat Demetrius Johnson, but it's still a clear show of progression. And for Moreno, I have never really liked Moreno's game very much. And I've always felt that his wins sort of papered over some really glaring holes that when he got the Sergio Pettis fight, I was just like, I'm not going to pick him to beat Sergio Pettis because I don't think he can out-grapple Sergio Pettis consistently. And if he can't, and he's stuck in a striking battle, his striking is just bad. He just throws these huge looping strikes, and if they catch you, and if he does one, you know, if he throws and lands one impressively, then we're like, oh my God, Brandon Moreno, look at that amazing wild strike he just threw. And if he doesn't, he's just stuck throwing the same couple of wild looping strikes over and over and over and getting picked apart.
I think his striking definitely got better. It seemed to take a weird step back in the Pettis fight where he like,
I mean, the part of the thing with the losing every minute of the Dustin Ortiz fight is his striking isn't good, but he caught Ortiz with like a really perfect looping strike and put him away. Like, you know, he's kind of, he reminds me a little bit in that way of like, of Brian Ortega without the obvious schooling of like picking up really perfect techniques that haven't gelled into a total style yet. Where you watch Brian Ortega lose and you're just like, okay, this dude's doing a bunch of stuff that just doesn't work, but I can see the fundamentals that he's trying to build to something that works. With Moreno, it's sort of like, this guy does a bunch of stuff that shouldn't really work, and it's working, but I don't really see the underlying fundamental. Like, I don't see a jab there. I don't see a really clean technical strike he's throwing or a clean like way he's moving or thing he's doing. I see somebody who sits outside and is like, I'm going to leap in with something this guy doesn't expect. And if it catches him off guard, great. If it doesn't, then I'll initiate a scramble that I think I can win.
Yeah, that's fair. He made some improvements under Ludwig, but they were all in the vein of like having some. What was that? My God, they were all in the vein of like having a set of moves now, which he didn't before. Where like we've said this about previous fighters who train under Ludwig, and then suddenly it's like, oh, now they have like a dozen moves. Like this sets up this. Okay, and okay, they got used to that, so now I'm going to do B sets up C instead, but it's all like preordained kind of moves, not necessarily learning the fundamentals. And otherwise, Moreno's striking is very reactive. It's very much like everything he does in the fight is very much based on what the opponent's trying to do to him, and then just trying to go hard to punish them for that. And so he still has this very disparate feel, even though I do think like, with how quickly he picks up some of these Ludwig type moves, I still think it's possible that at any moment we could see Brandon Moreno who's like, oh, he's turned a corner. It's
it could all coalesce. Like I say, I you know, there's a very Brian Ortega vibe to it for me. It's just Ortega's always like, even when Ortega was losing every round of every fight, it was always like, okay, I can see a lot of this. I can see exactly the style you're trying to build, and if you can build that style, it's going to be a very dangerous technical style. And I don't yet see that with Moreno. The other thing that has me picking Borg here is that if Borg gets caught on the defensive side of scrambles, we've seen that Borg is not great on the defensive side of scrambles. I think that's a very good apt Tim Elliott comparison, where it's like, if Tim Elliott is on the wrong side of a scramble, the holes open up. But Moreno tends to give the advantage and then fight back from that.
That reactive thing. It's going to be Borg dictating what kind of scrambles, when we're scrambling. He's like, that was the big problem against Sergio Pettis, right? Moreno just couldn't wrestle. Borg can.
So I don't see Moreno being able to to break down enough of Borg's game at any one point to win rounds. I think he could have big moments where he lands big shots or where he gets a sudden advantageous position where he gets Borg's back or gets him in a scary spot. But Borg's never been submitted. And, well, his only submission is that Demetrius Johnson ridiculous flying arm bar. And I don't see Moreno having the kind of game like Scoggins or Ortiz where he could just control Borg for whole rounds.
Yeah. If he's got that kind of game, we haven't seen it yet.
Yep. So I got to pick Borg. Borg is a substantial favorite. Opened at minus 230, adjusted down to minus 287, is currently at minus 283. Moreno opening at plus 170, adjusting up to plus 230, currently at plus 227. Those odds stayed pretty much flat there. I'm a little surprised Borg is that big a favorite. I feel like a lot of people underrate him, but I like his style matchup here. I think this fight matches up well for him.
I feel better about my Borg pick now. I'll just say that.
All right. Watch, we'll both be terribly wrong, but you know. It'll be Borg getting knocked out for the first time in his career. And everybody will be like, see, I told you. And you'll be like, oh, how am I supposed to know he can't get knocked out the first time ever? Jesus Christ, come on.
Give us a break, people.
Yeah. That brings us to a women's strawweight bout, Karolina Kowalkiewicz versus Felice Herrig. And I really love this fight. Mm-hmm. Like, if we're not excited for Beck Rawlings versus Ashlee Evans-Smith, I am way more excited for Herrig Kowalkiewicz. Mostly because I think that Herrig has turned into a much better fighter than she used to be. Like, I always used to think that Herrig was kind of... I would say that Herrig was underrated early in her career when she was everybody was just like, oh, she's just this pretty girl who is a kickboxer or something. And it's like, yeah, she's actually not a very good kickboxer at all, but she's a really decent scrambling, grappling wrestler. And she beat a lot of people doing that, you know, losing to Carla Esparza and Barb Honchak and Tisha Torres. Like, there's nothing wrong with that at all. Mm-hmm. And then she kind of hit this point in the UFC where it was like, kind of everything evened out, where it's like, okay, there's clearly some athletic discrepancies here that are just hard, you know, running up against Tisha Torres, especially the Paige Van Zandt loss. That was like, okay, you're really running up against an athletic ceiling here, it feels like.
Yeah.
And then she's turned that around now to become really underrated.
Yeah, now she's really good.
Where it's like, oh, actually, you've compensated for that by becoming a much more controlled combination boxer and really actually putting together your kickboxing game that you always were supposed to have and never did. And then you're still a decent scrambling wrestle grappler and not strong enough to just dominate people. You know, she only got one takedown on Courtney Casey, who's really easy to take down, and Casey actually swept her from it. But she then outboxed Courtney Casey all the rest of the fight. And problem here against Kowalkiewicz is sort of like, what if that Courtney Casey fight, there was a split and it was a close fight still, and, you know, Herrig had to stay really controlled and really composed to win it? What if Casey was not easy to take down and didn't have the power, but had a lot better movement? And that's kind of the matchup you're looking at here. And at that point, Herrig probably gets outworked because she's still not the world's best athlete. And her combination boxing is much better, and I expect she will catch Kowalkiewicz multiple times, considering that Kowalkiewicz still just loves to run in and out on straight lines with her head up, throwing combinations. That's how she works. She's not going to slip a lot of stuff, but she's really good at, like, she moves a lot from the outside. It's kind of like the Dominic Cruz thing. Not that she moves like Dominic Cruz, but it's the same thing where Dominic Cruz would like move a whole ton way outside and he's like picking all the spots. And then when it came time to actually throw, he just enters on one straight line and then backs out. And it was always just like mixing things up and getting awkward enough that people would never know where that straight line was going to be. Mm. And Kowalkiewicz is kind of that. Like, she's just moving constantly back and forth and circling and finding an angle and then attacking on that angle and rushing in on a straight line, pulling back out and keeping her volume up. And neither woman has a lot of power, but Kowalkiewicz is just bigger. And I think if Herrig defaults to the clinch to try to take her down, Kowalkiewicz is a better clinch fighter with with great knees from the clinch and a good ability to control position, generally good takedown defense. Obviously, Claudia Gadelha got her down, but Gadelha is kind of a beast in a way that Herrig isn't. And so, yeah, I think it's going to be a decision for Kowalkiewicz, but I think that Herrig is better positioned than she ever has been at any point in her career to put on her most controlled, consistent performance and have either a very close fight, or if Kowalkiewicz is somehow on a bad night or finally gets hurt really in a fight, like we've never really seen her get hurt in a fight, paying for all the shots she takes, then there's a chance for Herrig to take it. But it would have to be like, it's a small chance,
Yeah. Rather, it's a narrow path that Herrig has to walk to make this one happen, because like I love this fight. I've been super into the renaissance of Felice Herrig. Seeing her, who was formerly a fighter who there was an athletic ceiling, but also it's like she was never ever comfortable in a fight until like 2 years ago, where she was always like sort of freaking out, always engaging in whatever fight her opponent wanted her to, and always just going way too hard, never taking a moment's rest. She's not that fighter anymore. She steals moments of rest constantly, because she's just calm. She's just reacting, reading, maintaining her distance. She suddenly looks like an experienced kickboxer, and I really like that. I really like that transformation. How crazy would it be for Felice Herrig to go from losing to Paige Van Zandt, who is now this close to being like officially swept under the rug as a shot prospect, to becoming a legitimate top contender in the women's strawweight division? Like, how crazy would that transition be? And in a space of just a couple years, like Herrig's up and down career before this point, now she's put together 4 really impressive wins in a row. And 3 of them are really impressive. I don't want to overrate Kylan Curran too much, but what I like about this matchup too is that Herrig's fights leading into this have actually, I think, prepared her in a lot of ways for what she's going to have to deal with, or they have at least showed me that she's capable of dealing with some of what Kowalkiewicz brings to the table. Kowalkiewicz brings a pressure and a sort of nonstop mashing come forward style, like Justine Kish. And Herrig did a really good job of both outboxing and out wrestling Kish in that fight. She brings some of the power of Courtney Casey, but not the speed. The big difference between Kowalkiewicz and any of these previous 3 opponents is that she's a better defensive wrestler, and is very, very good in the clinch. And that's going to be the really dangerous part, because I think we're looking at a matchup where Felice Herrig kind of genuinely lights Kowalkiewicz up in the first round, has an easy time countering her on the way in, because, as you said, Karolina doesn't move her head very much. She comes in straight lines with both hands working all the time. She's there to be hit. Lest we forget how effortlessly, but for the one punch that hurt her, Joanna and Jedrzejczyk outboxed her in their 5-round fight. She just had no trouble whatsoever evading and keeping her straight punches on Kowalkiewicz's face. So Herrig can do that. We've seen that quality of counter punching. We have seen nice footwork, just good, efficient boxing. In 3 fights in a row now, we've seen those skills from her. But particularly against Kish, who was like the most aggressive of these fighters, it was the wrestling that saved Herrig at moments. Yeah. She needed to hit those shots. She has a good shot. She's got, and especially now that she's becoming a better counterpuncher, we know she has good timing. And that more than anything is what determines your ability to hit a reactive takedown. It's just timing and commitment. But if she goes for those shots, if she, by countering Kowalkiewicz, encourages her to turn up the pace, or turn up the pressure, then she's really going to need those takedowns. And if she can't get one, if Kowalkiewicz's takedown defense is good enough to stop that, she's going to end up tied up with Karolina. And that's the kind of fight where, much as it was for Rose Namajunas, I can see Karolina being the person to like remind Felice. Remember when you used to freak out and get all anxious and start to feel tired and feel like you couldn't, your body couldn't do what your mind wanted it to? Well, I'm kneeing you in the body a million times. I'm elbowing you in the top of the head. I'm holding on to you. Holy shit, do you realize how strong I am? You know, like you didn't think I was as strong as I am, but now I'm holding on to you, and it feels, I can see that being a slippery slope for Felice Herrig, but I still think she can win this fight. I think Kowalkiewicz is sort of an IQ test of an opponent because she doesn't have a ton of variety to her game. Like, Karolina can adjust, but her adjustment is virtually always, oh, I've started to lose. Now I'm going to turn up the pace and come after you more. Her adjustment has always been to just up the pace, up the pressure, and turn it into a messier fight so that she can win. And I really like what I've seen out of Felice Herrig's boxing. And I think she can manage that distance enough that Kowalkiewicz is just going to take too long to get to the pace she needs to win. So I think Herrig can probably pick up the early rounds here. I think she'll get rounds 1 and 2, possibly lose the third, possibly get beat up pretty bad, but I like Herrig to win a close decision.
All right. So I'm also reading now. A warrant is now out for Conor McGregor's arrest.
That's perfect.
And Artem Lobov has been pulled from the card.
No. That can't be. Why? Oh, God, that. Fuck you, Conor McGregor. All right, you just cost me all I've ever wanted, which is Caceres versus Lobov, you piece of shit. Damn it. Seriously, I was so excited for that stupid fight.
Oh, Lord.
God damn it.
This is kind of amazing. All right, well, so yes, for those listening live, Dana White has announced that a warrant is out for Conor McGregor's arrest, and his plane is not allowed to leave. And Lobov has been pulled from the card, and that fight is scrapped now. So
Jesus Christ! Don't worry, they won't pay Caceres' show money.
Man, this is the dumbest pro wrestling angle we've ever had to deal with. By far.
Yep. Khabib did reappear, by the way, right? Yesterday the story was that he vanished. Okay.
Last seen wearing a Justin McCulley mask.
This is so much dumber than, like, the thing is, UFC antics are always like the dumb drunk trailer park version of pro wrestling antics. So it's like, it's not just, oh, it's pro wrestling, it's silly, look at this production. It's too real for that. It's like Jeremy Stevens is arrested. Conor McGregor has a warrant out because he started smashing windows at the casino. Like, oh, what a sport.
Oh, man. All right. So, on that note, odds for Herrig versus Kowalkiewicz.
Yeah, that fight I was excited for what seems like an eternity ago.
Kowalkiewicz opened at -270, jumped up to -180 or so, and is currently at -189. Herrig opened at +190, dropped down to +155, and is currently at +158. So, I definitely think that, I think we both feel like Herrig is a live dog here as an underdog. Like, I'm not surprised she's an underdog at all, but I think she is well poised for the performance of her career.
Yeah, I agree.
And that brings us to the main card, the pay-per-view, opening with a lightweight bout. Iaquinta, Paul Felder. Take it away.
I'm so distracted now in my head.
I know.
I knew something was coming. As I was talking about Felice Herrig, I could just see you grinning. Some bad news was bound to come. Okay, Iaquinta, Paul Felder. Iaquinta's recent career has been really weird, hasn't it? Mostly because his recent career has been real estate. Stole that joke from the Heavy Hands comments. But I was noting this this week on Heavy Hands. Iaquinta beat Jorge Masvidal in a controversial split decision in 2015, and that was his second to most recent fight. And then after that, he knocked out Diego Sanchez in a phenomenal display of meaningless violence. And so it's like it's almost been
3 full years. It's been 3 full years since he's had a meaningful fight.
Since he's had like a defensible win too, like
well, since he's had a defensible win, it's been more than 3. Oh no, if you want to go even all the way back,
I just think it's crazy to think that just 2 fights ago now for Iaquinta was Jorge Masvidal, who has had an entire run since then, like 2 entire runs since then, many fights. And Paul Felder's been active. He's been in there. He's been making small improvements. Iaquinta still kind of looks like the guy he's always been in the brief glimpses of him that we've gotten to see. And what he's always been is a front foot heavy combination puncher who can wrestle, but usually does so defensively and will occasionally mix in shots to keep things interesting, but tends to like to hang his head over his front foot, dangle that chin out there a little more than he should, and throw combinations and defend effectively, usually only in the midst of those combinations or when he's setting up a counter. And I think that Paul Felder can handle that kind of style. I think Iaquinta's chin is going to be there for Felder to catch, whereas the only thing on Felder that Iaquinta is going to have a hard time hitting is going to be his chin. Felder, he can be hit to the legs, he can be hit to the body, but he's quite good with his head movement and especially with his counters. I think it's going to be a kind of fight where Iaquinta ends up chasing Felder's chin and gets countered hard for it. Maybe doesn't get knocked out, but gets hurt. That's the exclamation point that seals the win for Felder. So I'm taking Paul Felder by probably a decision, possibly a TKO.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of things here that are a little bit I'm struggling with a little more.
Mm-hmm.
One of those is Felder's takedown defense. Mostly that he tends to be especially as a guy who likes to clinch a lot, he's a very relaxed, unaggressive clinch fighter. Like, he hits really fucking hard when he sets something up, and he's, he can really shock people with his clinch offense. But a lot of times he'll push for the clinch, and then he'll just kind of get controlled, or he'll just kind of like let just wait and let things slowly develop, trying to find just the right angle for just the right shot. And I mean, that was one of the reasons I picked Charles Oliveira over him. Was that I was like, well, Charles, if they're going to clinch up, Charles Oliveira is going to get him to the ground, and he's going to get Felder's back. And he did. He also then couldn't choke him out, and then did what Charles Oliveira does and quit when the fight gets hard. And that has me worried against Iaquinta, because Iaquinta does have, he's got a good wrestling game, and he's got a good top game, and he's got a good grappling game. He's got both guys have the kind of grappling game that surprises opponents, where, Iaquinta may not be an excellent grappler and Felder may not be an excellent grappler, but they're both good enough to win fights there against almost anyone and to surprise almost anyone. So there's a feeling if Felder is going to give Iaquinta advantages that way, he could give away the fight that way.
Yeah.
I like Iaquinta's hands more than Felder's. I like the way he throws those combinations more. Felder selects shots better. He's more creative from range. And he's better about being defensive and picking his shots. But I do think that Iaquinta is a craftier boxer. For what that's worth. Just
I have trouble with what the definition of craftier boxer might really be, because like it's hard for me to think of Iaquinta as a craftier boxer when Felder is much better defensively.
Sure. Okay.
But he's definitely a better combination puncher.
He's a better combination puncher.
For sure.
So if Iaquinta can keep pressure on Paul Felder, I think he might get a lot of advantage, a lot to work with in terms of getting his fight going the way he wants. Because, if he can push Felder back and keep Felder from being able to kick by being on his back foot and keep his hands busy and get in on Felder's legs and get in on him in the clinch and take advantage of those opportunities to get takedowns, I think he can just steer the fight away. But I also do feel like Felder is better at reasserting himself from mistakes when things start going wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like Felder's a little better at recapturing momentum. So it's a really, really hard fight to pick for me.
Yeah, I understand that. I look at that Masvidal fight of Iaquinta's again, and I'm like, oh, he got hurt like 3 times. It's like Masvidal just lightly countered him over and over and over.
True, but
I don't know. It's like maybe Felder.
I just feel like Masvidal is a much cleaner puncher.
Yeah,
take advantage of that kind of bad defense.
Yeah, that's fair. He's inconsistent in his own ways, but as a boxer, maybe more so than Felder. Yeah.
I don't know. I'm going to pick Iaquinta here, and I'm going to do it up based on the idea that I think Iaquinta can make his wrestling count for more in this fight and keep Felder on the back foot. But I'll be fascinated to see. I could easily be wrong.
Yeah, if he does, like that's a way to win, to beat Paul Felder for sure.
Iaquinta is a very slight favorite, open at -165 and is trending upwards, currently at -122. And Felder opened at +135 and is trending down, closing the gap, has dropped down to +116 and is now down at -102. So those odds are trending towards dead even. And partially, too, I think there's just a real factor of we don't actually know where Iaquinta is right now. We don't really know what he can do.
That's significant for me,
really.
I haven't seen Iaquinta convincingly win a fight now in over 3 years. So I've seen Paul Felder win 3 in the last year alone.
Yeah. So that gives me real pause in my own analysis and feelings of this. I'm happy to see it dead even. I wouldn't even be surprised to see Felder end up being the favorite by fight time.
Yeah. It should be fun, though. I mean, it's a good stylistic
matchup. It'll be a ton of fun. I think that either way, Iaquinta, even if Iaquinta can pressure and push Paul Felder and get him down and things like that, Felder, like I say, he's great at bouncing back from adversity.
Yeah.
He's great at fighting through bad spots. He's a good scrambler, a much better scrambler than people give him credit for. And then,
Iaquinta too, though.
Yeah, Iaquinta too. That's the thing. Is that I just feel like if Iaquinta can assert if he can be the assertive one, then he can maybe win out with those scrambling battles. But we'll see. God damn it.
Her barks have gotten more powerful lately. My God. This is like a Dogvakine. Does that work?
All right. That brings us to another lightweight bout. Michael Chiesa versus Anthony Pettis. And I feel like I'm continually checking Twitter just to make sure this fight is still on now that Chiesa has gotten cut somehow.
A shard of glass from Conor McGregor throwing a pint of Guinness through a window.
Yeah. Assuming the fight is still on. Oh, Jesus. This is, let's see, this fight.
Oh, no.
Yeah, this is me. Okay. And assuming the fight is still on, this is a weird fucking fight.
Yeah.
Because Michael Chiesa's boxing is still trash, but Anthony Pettis' wrestling is still trash. It is. I mean, what we saw in the Dustin Poirier fight is that anybody who is still willing to pursue Pettis and try to take him down is still going to take him down. He's still going to back himself.
I don't think that's fair. I think Poirier has a lot. Poirier's wrestling success in that fight owes a lot to his aggressive pocket boxing. That he was putting heat on Pettis. Pettis kept being forced to throw his hands up to square his feet. I think that's why Pettis had such a hard time stopping those takedowns, because he was getting mauled when any moment their wrestling wasn't happening, he was dealing with a lot. So when you give Pettis the chance to actually wrestle, to like set his distance and react before you're already in his face hitting him, I think he's a fairly good defensive wrestler. Remember, Eddie Alvarez didn't actually really take him down all that much. And Rafael dos Anjos managed it, but again, tons and tons of that crazy southpaw pressure inside. So you can tell if it seems to you like I'm filling space, it's because Zane Simon. Oh, here he is. He's back.
Yeah, they're okay. Sorry. Anyway,
I was saying I think the aggression, the pressure of Poirier with the strikes had a lot to do with that, because when there's less of that, as in the Eddie Alvarez fight, Pettis can stop those takedowns. He'll get tied up, but
yeah, I mean, it's still a thing where Pettis getting pressured gets him tied up, and him getting tied up either leads to him losing fights, even if it doesn't lead to him getting taken down.
That's all. I think it's more the pressure than it's specifically the wrestling. I think his wrestling has improved. It's okay. It's if you pressure him, you put him against the cage constantly, he's going to have problems.
Yeah. Basically, the dynamic of this fight, though, is still, to me, I feel like Chiesa is a craftier wrestler than Dustin Poirier, frankly. And he's not hard to hurt, so there's every chance that Anthony Pettis could hurt him, but he's very hard to finish.
Yep.
And being really hard to break down and finish, and being a relentless, crafty, funky wrestler that's hard to predict, feels like a recipe for Pettis to lose. Like, I no longer trust Pettis' resilience. You know? That's the thing. This is the kind of fight where it might have been a few years ago where I'd be like, well, Pettis is going to get taken down or pushed around a little, but he's going to be there as the fight goes on, and he's going to keep having chances to hurt Chiesa or even submit him, because, you know, Chiesa's been submitted before, and Pettis is a very, very good, crafty grappler. Mm-hmm. But what we saw in that Poirier fight as well was like a dude who kept giving up the bad positions and trying to reverse, but eventually, like, to the point he injured his rib. Like, it's just the resilience and the toughness and all those kinds of things aren't there for a long, hard fight that he's going to get punished repeatedly in. So I have to pick Chiesa on that measure pretty much alone, because if this stays standing, Chiesa's stand-up is still pretty trash.
Yeah. The Pettis resilience angle is big for me as well. I think it's notable. Phil McKenzie was pointing this out to me yesterday, but he was saying, like, Pettis, Pettis throughout his career has been this phenomenal athlete who has relied on his athletic ability. Then more and more as his career went on, he would get injured between fights, but he would still show up and look like Anthony Pettis. Now he's getting injured in his fights. Now he's getting hurt when he fights on a regular basis. He's having his orbital broken. He's getting rib injuries. He's pulling muscles. Like, that speaks.
Hands broken.
Yeah, exactly. Like, now he's no longer capable of withstanding that kind of punishment, or maybe he's to the point now athletically where, like, sometimes you just lose that tiny bit of speed, and now you're not able to roll with the shot the way you used to. You're not able to make that last second adjustment to protect your hand as you make contact the way you used to. Your things start happening to you rather than you having so much control over whatever happens in the fight. And yeah, that's a concern. But I still think the pressure is a big part of what beats Anthony Pettis. Like, I think if you're going to beat him, you pretty much have to get in his face, unless you are a striker on the level of Edson Barboza. Yeah. Unless you're a phenomenally technical striker with excellent footwork, you have to pressure Anthony Pettis. And I do not trust the game planning of Michael Chiesa. My concern,
totally fair,
right? Because Pettis is a good enough submission grappler that he can survive some scrambles with Chiesa for sure.
Yeah.
I don't think he's going to get a lot of opportunities to threaten Chiesa because Pettis has a good front headlock series, but Chiesa is not really a shot artist. A lot of takedowns from the clinch, and Chiesa doesn't really settle into your guard. So I don't see a lot of opportunities for Pettis to throw up triangles and arm bars either. But he can definitely hang and survive and scramble his way back to his feet a couple times if he needs to. I have confidence in his submission grappling skills. The thing is like when that's not happening, can Chiesa handle Pettis' striking as well as Pettis can handle Chiesa's grappling? Like Chiesa is going to get lit up with body kicks. The moment this fight starts, I'm expecting them to square off in open space. Chiesa's coming out southpaw. Pettis is going to instantly go orthodox and start throwing that right leg to the body. If he doesn't do that, he is doing himself a disservice. But I still have faith in Pettis' ability to identify openings at long range. And that's only going to go away if Chiesa pressures him. So my main concern is that Pettis might hit Chiesa enough that he convinces Chiesa to start pressuring him, that he has to because he's getting beaten up at range.
I think that's kind of what I see.
And that's real. That happened in Bobby Green's last fight with Eric Koch. Koch was controlling Bobby Green, then he started trading with him, and that was an invitation to a brawl. Bobby Green won the fight from that point on because Koch let him into a fight he needed to win. And yeah, Pettis might do that to Chiesa, but like how much do I trust Michael Chiesa to like do the smart thing? To I don't know, to like do the right thing. He's scrappy, but he's not a pressure fighter. And I've never seen that from him. So I'm going to pick Anthony Pettis. I think as the fight goes on, it's going to get tough. And if that resilience, that lacking durability is a serious issue, then that could be a real problem if he starts to get cut, if he starts to get injured, if he starts to get beaten down and exhausted. Chiesa can take advantage of all of those things. And we've seen Chiesa in grimy fights before. He pulls through and fights as hard as he possibly can till the end. So it's just a factor of pressure, and I don't trust Chiesa to pressure consistently enough to outstrike Anthony Pettis.
Yeah, that's totally fair, and trust me, I really want to pick Anthony Pettis here. So I just don't. I don't trust any part of Anthony Pettis at this point.
It's not a trustworthy fight, is it?
No. Chiesa opened at -120, adjusted up and down to +115, and has dropped steadily down to -140 since then. Pettis opened at -120, adjusted up and down to -140, and has steadily risen to +115. So everybody else having those trust issues as well.
Yep.
And I'm not surprised Chiesa is the favorite here, even though I can easily see him lose in this fight.
Yeah, me neither.
Brings us to a featherweight bout, Renato Moicano, Calvin Kattar. And I love this fight, and you go ahead and talk about it. I screwed up my own last thing with the running after my dog. Dude.
What's not to love? Calvin Kattar had a phenomenally impressive performance over Andre Fili in his UFC debut on a short camp. Then he came in with a full camp to fight Shane Burgos and looked even better. He had excellent control of distance, great footwork, stayed very calm and composed in what was increasingly, as it went on, a tough back and forth kind of fight, and then just sort of decided to knock Burgos out at the start of the third round and changed some things up, made the adjustments he needed to make, and put a stamp on it. And yeah, Calvin Kattar is already for me like a must-see, a must-watch, appointment viewing kind of fighter.
I was shockingly impressed by that win, especially because my read on it ahead of the fight would be that the winner would be the guy who asserted forward pressure.
Yeah.
And Burgos did that, and Calvin Kattar beat him off his back foot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exceptionally impressive. Not the kind of thing you see often at all in MMA. Like,
no.
It was a good boxing performance.
Yeah.
Not what you usually see in the octagon. And Renato Moicano is like really similar to Calvin Kattar in a lot of ways as a striker. He also gets a lot done because of his footwork, good small angles, good sense of distance. He likes to counterpunch more than Kattar, I think, and does so a lot more sort of recklessly. Will just kind of swing shots at his opponent, but it's not necessarily a bad thing. Moicano has this really controlled, composed style when he's working behind his jab, when he's firing off low kicks. It's okay sometimes to turn into a scrapper in flashes and start throwing bombs. And Moicano uses that the way a lot of Brazilian fighters do, like to scare people off. You're going to try and exchange with me? Well, you better put your guard up because I'm going to swing 3 or 4 hard shots at you until you step back. And Calvin Kattar is not going to be like intimidated by that, but he's a defensively responsible fighter, so he's going to have to respect it. And so I think we're looking at another kind of chess matchy sort of fight here on the feet with a couple X factors. Moicano's wrestling and his jiu-jitsu are both excellent. Jiu-jitsu more so than wrestling, but he is a good wrestler, and the timing helps with those takedowns. Can Calvin Kattar stop those shots? Kind of hard to say. We haven't really seen Kattar have to deal with much wrestling. He had to stop some Andre Fili takedowns, and Fili has
did a good job meeting Fili on his level. When Fili would drop, Kattar would beat him like drop just as low to get the takedown defended.
Yeah, which is great. Like we saw good signs, but we haven't really seen him like do a lot of actual wrestling.
No,
and get tied up, and I think
he
it's
likes
fair
to
say
finish rounds with a big takedown where you can ground and pound for like the last 10 seconds. But it's a very style specific thing he's doing.
Yeah, it's a game thing. It's a gamesman's kind of move. So like that's an X factor. I don't really have a good sense for how this fight might play out if Moicano can secure a takedown. I think it's going to be difficult though, simply because of Kattar's control of range. That Kattar is rarely going to be there. He's rarely going to be overextending for reactive shots, and he's rarely going to be close enough for any of those easy snatch kind of takedowns. So Moicano is going to have to cover distance to get in on his hips, and Kattar's footwork, I think, is good enough that his wrestling doesn't have to be as good as Moicano's to avoid those shots. And then otherwise, I think it really just kind of comes down to like volume and consistency if it's a striking battle. And I like Kattar for that, just slightly. But I think Kattar has more get up and go. He's got a little more urgency. Like I have to take this fight. It's getting too close. That's what he did in the Burgos fight so well. As the Fili fight went on, he just started beating Fili up more and more. I think we're going to see a similar progression in this one. But like I said, man, Moicano is tough and he is scrappy. And if you bring the fight to him, he will absolutely fight back. So this is one of those fights that I think is going to be a tactical sort of war that could boil over into a genuine brawl at almost any moment, but will probably mostly stay at a very entertaining simmer throughout. So I'm hyped for it. I'm taking Kattar by a fairly narrow decision.
I'm now seeing, let's see.
More news, more updates.
Yeah, that Chiesa may not be able to fight.
Oh my God.
Let me see.
I mean, this sport sucks. It deserves this. It deserves whatever curse has been placed in this card, but God damn it.
Okay.
The day before.
I'm told Ariel Helwani, that was an hour ago, saying I'm told Chiesa's cut is on his face. Unsure how serious it is at the time. I've heard arm as well, but face cut is definitely more likely to get that whole thing stopped.
How did he get cut? What happened? Was it really a broken window or something?
Yeah, I think they threw a chair through the car window.
Jesus Christ. Oh, Zane.
I know.
Boy, it's so good to have Conor McGregor back.
Okay, let's see. Brett Okamoto is saying Dana White confirmed Michael Chiesa suffered an injury, cuts to the face, and is in the hospital. Lobov has been pulled, so we're still not sure what's up with Chiesa in terms of getting pulled.
Cut on the face doesn't sound good.
No. But going to the hospital also doesn't mean anything. It just means that
Oh yeah,
they could be, giving it a couple stitches or some basic treatment. I mean, where the hell else are you going to go to get a face cut treated,
sure. But a cut from glass on the face in general does not sound like a good
It
sign.
doesn't sound good. And often, there's a reason fighters typically hide cuts on their face when they're like weighing in and things like that, because commissions will just step in and say, no, you can't fight with a cut on your face.
As
Okay.
you shouldn't be able to, because that's yeah.
Hopefully
it's on the chin or something, and it's not a big deal.
Yeah, hopefully it's totally fine, but we may just be scrapping fights as we're talking about them. Yeah, the big thing for me, which you hit on with this Kattar Moicano fight, is honestly that it's all about consistency over rounds and consistency and responsibility. And I think that Kattar is the more consistent and more responsible striker.
Mm-hmm.
He is more likely to what we saw out of that Shane Burgos fight, and what we saw out of the Andre Fili fights, is a fighter who fights at a very composed, controlled, very fundamental kickboxing pace all fight. The big X factor here that I think we've kind of missed, or that is like the one thing that really has me worried about Kattar winning, is leg kicks and the fact that he doesn't check them.
Good point.
He does not check leg kicks, and Moicano's are wicked.
Mm-hmm.
So if Moicano can just build his offensive game plan around leg kicks and cutting Kattar's movement down and cut down his ability to be consistent and to be composed, then he can absolutely win. If this gets into if he can cut down Kattar's movement, and then he can be be on his back foot, pot shotting, doing what he did with Jeremy Stephens, as Kattar has to be slower moving after him.
Right. And if
there's a very clear way for him to win.
If he can rack up damage with those kicks, then Kattar is going to have to come after him.
Yeah.
Like the way you beat kicks is with pressure, and Kattar might not like to be pressuring all the time,
Yeah. I think I thought he was more comfortable pressuring than not, but what we saw in that Shane Burgos fight was that he was intensely comfortable not pressuring, being on the
very least. It means more of a chance of getting countered and more of a chance of getting tired,
Yep. So I am picking Kattar. I do think that he's more consistent, that he keeps his guard more, he keeps his guard better. He doesn't get wild in those moments like Moicano does. He just is a much tighter, more technically consistent fighter. He's really hard to hurt. And he seems like because he's so responsible with his pacing and his defense, that he's hard to take down. So I'm picking him over Moicano, but it all hinges on really whether or not his lead leg gets beat to hell in the process.
I will say, that's a legit concern because of how many low kicks Shane Burgos landed, but I do kind of think that Burgos only landed so many because he wasn't loading up and throwing them hard. He was just like kind of snatching a shot here. He was using it like a jab. And Moicano's not going to win this if he uses jab low kicks. He's going to win because he's a hard low kicker.
Yeah.
So we'll see how Kattar responds, though.
We will. Odds on the fight: Calvin Kattar opened as the favorite, opening at -180, adjusting up and down to -160, and slowly trending up to -132 since then. And Moicano opening as the underdog at +140, adjusting basically back down to up and down to +140, and falling to +107. So these odds moving closer and closer to dead even. I like Kattar as the favorite still.
Mm-hmm.
If those odds get tighter, but I definitely think it deserves to be a close fight. Moicano definitely has he has enough technical kickboxing skill. I mean, I would say Shane Burgos looked in their fight like he had figured out what Kattar was doing and was starting to find the holes in Kattar's style before Kattar made his own adjustments and knocked him out. But it means like somebody else who can be technical and crafty. Kattar is a very fundamentals kickboxer. There are gaps to find there. It's just they're hard. He keeps a very composed style. So
that's the pro and the con of being like a disciplined technique first kind of fighter is that somebody like Shane Burgos, potentially somebody like Moicano, can kind of catch you out doing unorthodox things, throwing shots the way from angles you don't expect and recklessly like you don't expect him to. But also as the technical fighter, you can adjust to those things as long as you stay calm. And that's what Kattar did so well against Burgos is, like you said, Burgos got to read on what he was doing, and Kattar decided to do something different.
Well, and to Kattar's credit too, for a guy that we've just kind of found out about in the UFC, he's been doing this for a long time.
Long time.
Already a decade into his MMA career, and he shows up like a vet. It doesn't look like it's worn on him yet. So that's basically right now he just has all the benefits of being a longtime veteran without seemingly any of the downside yet.
He's had more of like a boxing career. Like he's beaten a lot of lower level, not bad, but lower level opponents on the regional circuit, and he's gotten by with good defense and being responsible. So he still looks like the fighter he's supposed to be. He's not been beaten down by that experience.
That brings us to our co-main event, the strawweight title fight rematch, Rose Namajunas, Joanna Jedrzejczyk. And I am really excited for this, and I really thought I would be going into this picking Joanna.
Oh, I'm sorry, Zane. I'm just hearing it's been canceled. Joanna Jedrzejczyk has been killed by Conor McGregor.
Don't
go on.
Don't do this to me.
Go on. Yes, I'm excited too.
Oh Lord.
Sorry, please. Please continue. Zane?
Anyway, yes, sorry. That just kind of killed me right there. Like even thinking about that, just like okay. I went into this thinking I would pick Joanna again because I'm kind of a mark for Joanna. I love the way she fights. I love the way her style's put together. I still think there are gaps in the way Rose Namajunas fights. I still don't like that fight Rose Namajunas had with Karolina Kowalkiewicz, and I don't think it's something that we've never necessarily seen her improve from, frankly. I think, we've seen her basically in the time since then, we've seen Rose Namajunas get a number of seen her get two pretty quick dominating finishes against, one in a fighter against Michelle Waterson who really just didn't have any of the physicality to hang with her. And then that Joanna fight, which was, really just
two fights in which her opponent either didn't have time to or didn't want to do what Kowalkiewicz ended up doing to her.
Yeah. So I don't necessarily know that we have seen a Rose Namajunas who is prepared to adjust to a deep, complicated fight against somebody who can match her physically. Which means if Joanna can stay on Namajunas for a couple of rounds, keep volume, stay safe, and stay outside, or get her in the clinch and just start imposing her clinch game there, then I expect Joanna still to win this fight. I don't have any faith that Namajunas is crafty enough down the stretch when maybe a little snap has gone off the power, or a little speed has gone off the punch to turn around a volume-heavy kickboxing fight from Joanna Jedrzejczyk. However, the thing I saw in that fight, that brief fight, and we've always known that Joanna's defense isn't great. It just, she comes in with flurries with her head on line, and what I saw in that fight against Rose was just a complete lack of recognition for a left hook. Just Namajunas, every time she threw the left hook, it landed clean, and it ended up dropping Joanna and being the signal of the end. I think it was what dropped her both times and hurt her in between. And if she's going to get caught with the left hook every single fucking time, then it's just really hard for me to see her taking a long-term kickboxing or a multiple rounds kickboxing fight based around volume. In part, I think, it's like, oh, she could play the Matador better. She could be, she could be feeling less weak from her weight cut. Or maybe just less able to bounce back better, less drained from a bad weight cut. And that may be. But partially, I think, too, it's just Namajunas' length in comparison to somebody like Jessica Andrade, who didn't have the ability to match her at distance.
I think that's the big thing.
Yeah. It's that, like, I don't necessarily know that I can trust Joanna to play the Matador against somebody as long as her.
Yeah.
And if I can't, and she can't see the left hook coming, then I got to pick Rose in this rematch. And that's really all it is. It just kind of comes down to that one power strike, because I honestly think that, and we saw it, that Rose is a slower combination fighter. She is less, she's got good speed on single big shots, but when it comes to actually throwing combinations, Joanna is much faster.
Mm-hmm.
And was able to hit Rose with a lot of combinations in that brief 3-minute window. Just Rose would come in with one big shot, and if she didn't hit Joanna would counter with 2 or 3. Joanna even nailed her with a good solid head kick in that fight. But the left hooks just found her over and over again. And you can't get nailed with that kind of power shot over and over.
Yeah.
So I'm going to pick Rose, and I don't want to. I like Joanna's style better. I like Rose as a person. I think, she's awesome and all that, whatever. But I love much more of the game that Joanna's put together, but it's not a game based on amazing defensive responsibility as a striker.
Mm-hmm.
And it appears that may just be enough to lose to Rose Namajunas.
Yeah. It's it's interesting, isn't it? Let me address a couple things. I like how we've now gotten to a place, I say sarcastically, of course, as MMA fans, where now Joanna's talk of having a terrible, brutal weight cut is now literally just an excuse, to the point where it's weight cuts are easy. You know what I mean? You're not going to adjust to what she's doing. You're not giving Rose enough respect. Shut up. It can't have been the weight cut.
Yeah. No, it could have.
That couldn't have affected her reaction time or her durability or her clear-headedness at all. We've known for many years. Well, it's crazy. It feels like it's been a long time Joanna's been around. It hasn't really. But we have known since the early days of her UFC career, she has a hard weight cut to make 115. We've seen her many times in the sweatsuit. We've seen her looking very gaunt at weigh-ins, and that's not getting any easier. She said herself she would go up to 125 if she had won that fight with the first fight with Rose, and she'll probably do so no matter what happens after this one, if she's willing to do what's best for her. Because, yeah, it seems now it's pretty clear that cut to 115 is too hard. I don't think that's a non-factor. I think a better weight cut a second time around can absolutely let us see a better version of Joanna and Jedrzejczyk.
Mm-hmm.
I also think it's weird that I don't know. I'm glad you mentioned the reach of Rose Namajunas. I really think that is the main factor at play here, is that I think Joanna, at her best at least, it's not like she doesn't know that left hooks come after right hands or doesn't know how to protect that angle. We've seen her do it before. She did it against Jessica Andrade through a lot of bombing left hooks, and Joanna got away and managed to get outside of those shots repeatedly throughout the fight. It's just that her defense is her footwork. That's what protects her. And she doesn't move her head all that well. Her hands aren't particularly attentive to defending her head. Really, when it comes to almost anything but the jab, if we're talking about precision and accuracy, Joanna doesn't really have a lot of it. You talked about that hand speed, and it's like a lot of flurries that lack the accuracy of the single hard shots that Rose was throwing. And likewise with the defense, like her hands aren't picking off shots as they come in and just sort of homing in on what's threatening her. It's more like a sort of coverall footwork. I'm getting away. I'm at a different angle. The specifics aren't really the strength of Joanna's game. And I think that's a thing that can be adjusted to for a rematch, is just bringing in more sparring partners with longer arms. Even if Joanna is too fixated on the weight cut business, if Mike Brown brought in some people with long arms, if they're like, hey, let's get Valerie Letourneau back in here and get her to throw left hooks at Joanna or whatever, then like, as long as she's prepared for that, how many more layers of trickery does Rose have to her boxing? Like, how much depth is there at all to Rose Namajunas' striking game without duress, right? Like, if you just let Rose fight for a while and adjust to what she's doing, at what point does she run out of ideas? Does that get worse when it becomes a fight? When it becomes, she's no longer just picking her shots and the opponent's reacting to her and she has the initiative the whole time, but it's fighting for survival, having to grit it out, having to trade blows. I'm still not confident that Rose Namajunas can win that kind of fight, as I think everybody who knows these fighters should be reluctant until we see it to believe that Rose Namajunas can win that Kowalkiewicz kind of matchup.
Mm-hmm.
And like, there's a reason I had such an easy time picking Joanna over Kowalkiewicz, because she's just a better version of her. She's like, especially like when it comes to the clinch fighting skills where Kowalkiewicz is really effective, Joanna's a beast in that range. And you take away that safety blanket, or that safety net, you take away, oh, the clinch is a place where you can go to get out of danger and start beating Rose up there. How quickly does that become the completely opposite kind of fight? How quickly does Rose Namajunas become the reactor and Joanna takes the initiative and starts pressuring her? I don't know. I still think it's going to be a dangerous first round. Rose Namajunas is always dangerous early in the fight, and her reach and what seems to be a burgeoning amount of power in her hands, that makes her effective. But if Joanna can avoid those early shots, and if she can do so in a way that doesn't require her to constantly be backing away on the end of Rose's reach, but instead results in her pushing forward, closing the distance, getting the clinch, then that's a matchup that Joanna Jedrzejczyk can still very much win and probably look good doing it. So a lot of question marks. I think your read is very viable. I'm going to go with Joanna, though.
Yeah, I want to go with Joanna, and I do think if she can sell out on being an aggressive clinch fighter, mm-hmm, and making that her path to victory here, just from the start, I think she can absolutely win and beat Rose. No, mm-hmm, question. I just don't. I think that the fighter Joanna wants to be more and more is the way out kickboxer, who is throwing lots of volume from range and depending on her footwork. And I just think her defense hasn't been set up to handle a really good long left hook. Like, that just seems to be, watching that fight, it's just like, it just hit her and she didn't see it. She wasn't prepared for it. She wasn't looking for it.
Expecting to be out of range when she moved her feet. Yeah, didn't. But honestly, like, we've seen this in previous fights from Joanna. She'll be safer if she just walks forward.
Yeah.
Like, she can walk into Rose's reach and have a much easier time not taking the full force of those shots if she just makes that one change.
Yeah.
And I don't know why we're like, people, it seems weird that MMA fans are now so convinced that Joanna can't adjust. Like, no, I don't get this. Like, I like both of these women. they're both cool. And like, Joanna's not even just a heel. She's just a real person who is like, you can have some critiques of how she's behaved, but it's not
she fist fights for money in a cage.
I know, right? And she's also like, that's also the same person who fans have up to this point been like, oh man, she's so lovable and adorable and nice and fun. It's like, yeah, she's also a little crazy sometimes. So's Rose. They're fighters. They're professional fist fighters. So I don't want either of these women to lose. I like them both.
Yeah, I think if Joanna does change it up and if she can change her approach, then she had, like I say, in a deep fight, I pick her every time over Rose Namajunas.
And I don't mind picking Rose, but we're certainly not at a point where we can't be at a point where we've forgotten how well Joanna can adjust. Have we? She's capable.
Jedrzejczyk opened at -225, has trended up ever since. Is currently at -117. Namajunas opened at +180, has trended down, is currently at -105. So trending close to dead even.
Works for me.
And that brings us to our main event, Max Holloway, Khabib Nurmagomedov. Take it away.
Well, it's weird. It's just weird. Many people online have compared this to Daniel Cormier versus Anderson Silva. And with the implication of that being that, oh, it's amazing we have this last minute fill-in, it's going to be great. And then, of course, we're all expecting now, oh, the bigger wrestler just completely smothers the smaller striker. I don't know how people can so comfortably find that parallel, because like we've known for a while Anderson Silva's kind of shot, right? And it was like, oh, it's great that he's stepping up. At least we have something, was the reaction as I remember it then. This is different. Max Holloway is the reigning champion. He just beat Jose Aldo twice with equal ease both times. He's in his prime, and he has a frame that is suited to 155. It was almost inevitable that within the next year or two, Holloway would be moving up, because that cut to 145 looks tough. He's filling out as he gets older, and he's still a very young man. So it was coming, and now it just comes sooner than expected. That does mean this fight still has a lot of unfortunate asterisks that make it so that like analysts like you and me don't get to just look at the style matchup. We have to also keep in our heads that, oh, Max Holloway didn't get a full camp. How heavy was he, having just been injured and been, like taking some time off, expecting his next fight not to come for a while. So how hard is even the weight cut to 155 going to be on such short notice? Like jet lag, he's flying over unexpectedly right before the event. All of the preparation that usually allows us to just look at the style matchup is not there. So that does change a lot of things. We don't know if, for example, Max Holloway's famous pace, his ability to continue pushing a pace seemingly without tiring at all, round after round, if he's going to be able to do that against Khabib. We don't know if a guy who's already kind of a slow starter is going to start very, very slow because he's not been in training, he's not been sparring, like Nate Diaz the first time against Conor McGregor, if he needs to warm up. And if that's the case, it's probably going to be less forgiving than it was for Nate Diaz then, because if Max Holloway's not warmed up and ready for Khabib, he's not going to like take shots that he can afford to take. He's going to be dragged down into a kind of fight he doesn't want to have with anybody. But like if Max Holloway can look like Max Holloway, this is a really, really interesting matchup. Khabib has never faced anybody who has Max's counterpunching ability. He has never faced anybody who can use footwork the way Max does with composure in front of a dangerous opponent, taking small angles around them without constantly being forced to retreat. He's not faced somebody so tall who's still so good at defending takedowns up against the fence, nor somebody who's so good at doing damage from the clinch to dissuade future takedown attempts. I don't know if he's ever faced anybody as tough or as durable as Max Holloway, who just doesn't give a shit about being hit and seems to invite it if it means getting a chance to hit you back.
Well, he faced RDA. Let's not go that far.
Sure. But still, like Max Holloway's on that level at the very least.
Yeah. But he has faced that.
Okay. Fair enough. Yeah. But he's, this is still the elite level of toughness and determination. And with like a guy who might be the best striker in the sport right now, who is just a phenomenally adaptable striker, who can fight a number of different styles, who can pressure, who can counterpunch, who can box, who can throw spinning kicks, who can do pretty much anything he wants at range. So unfortunately, those asterisks just weigh down on the analysis of the style matchup, where it's just like inevitably I have to come back to, well, Khabib is prepared. He's the naturally bigger guy who has been fighting at this weight class up to this point. And Max Holloway's slow start, his typical slow start, has me very concerned that on short notice, Khabib is going to bring the fight to him early. And that Max's particular style of takedown defense, really reliant on overhooks, wrist control, and angling away, isn't going to be quite so easy against a takedown artist who mixes up his attacks as well as Khabib does. But thing is, like, a lot of that success that Khabib has had in the past comes off the pressure. A lot of the success he had against Edson Barboza was because Barboza never, ever felt comfortable just setting his feet, moving sideways in small movements rather than backwards in big ones, and just putting his shots together. And Max Holloway can do that. So if Max meets Khabib and refuses to let him have the kind of fight he needs, even if he has to take a bad round first, if he then comes out, meets Khabib in the center, and focuses all of his efforts on staying in that part of the cage, it's a fascinating style matchup that Max can definitely win. I'm thinking Khabib's fast start, though, is going to set a tone that Max is going to have a hard time coming back from. So I'm going to stick with Khabib as the pick. On the ground, you just don't want to fucking mess with Khabib Nurmagomedov, but getting there might actually be very interesting. So we'll see.
Oh, FYI, Rose Namajunas almost did take herself off the card because of Conor McGregor. Conor McGregor threw like a dolly, like an actual, like, you know, one of those big heavy things you use to pull boxes around.
Yeah.
Through the front window or through the window of the bus. And Namajunas almost just was like,
what's the plan here?
I don't know. Namajunas was almost so shaken up that she pulled herself from the card.
Jesus Christ!
And apparently she's been talked down, and we'll go on. But
what's going on? What? Somebody arrest this man! Stop him! He's ruining everything.
Apparently, the warrant being out for his arresting may have been Dana blowing smoke. The police themselves say that he's actually they're investigating, but
if he threw a dolly through a bus window, he should have a warrant out for his arrest. Stop this man before he ruins everything, okay?
Yeah, no kidding.
Let this card happen.
All right. So on that note, though, back to this. I don't like I really don't like to pick fights based off X factors.
Yeah.
Like, well, you know, his weight cuts not going well, or he's, you know, coming off short notes or whatever. Like, I don't like to do it. It's all, you know, very much tend to like to pick fights based on what you can see and what you know in the cage. But there are too many X factors for Max Holloway to overlook them. Like, this is a dude who pulled out of a fight with an injury just like a month ago. You know?
Yep. An injury that should be reminded, it wasn't so bad that he wasn't able to surf during the week of the fight. So it was a thing that would probably have prevented him from making weight, but I don't think it was anything too bad.
It wasn't anything too bad, but it was bad enough that he didn't fight on it.
Yeah, he did have to pull out of a fight.
And came into this on short notice heavier than he's ever been.
Mm-hmm.
By all accounts, for his weight cut, cutting more weight than ever. And cutting more weight than ever, already like 10 pounds up from where he normally would cut down to. So, short notice, no camp. As Khabib himself said on the MMA Hour, you know, you're not training for any of these, you're not preparing for the fight for any of these 6 days at this point. You're just cutting every single day at now. All he's going to be able to do up to this fight is cut weight.
Mm-hmm. He's going to be relying entirely on like previous experience in training. Yeah.
Like, that is too much to just be like, now you're going to go face a guy that, because much like you say, you know, Max Holloway or Khabib Nurmagomedov has never faced a striker like Max Holloway. Max Holloway has never faced a wrestler like Khabib Nurmagomedov.
Very true.
Nothing even close. Ricardo Lamas, we've always talked about as being sort of a B B- fighter everywhere who's an amazing opportunist. You know, not really a great wrestler, not really a great grappler, not really a great striker, but you give him a tiny opening and he's amazing at taking advantage of it.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty much the best offensive wrestler that Max Holloway has faced since he faced Dennis Bermudez.
Khabib's the same way, except he's constantly making those openings. He's forcing those openings and then taking advantage of every single one. I will say that the difference there is that to fall back on an old dumb cliche, every round does begin on the feet.
Yeah.
There is a slight advantage to the striker in that way because the striking can cancel the wrestling to an extent.
Yeah. It can. I'm just saying that, you know, like I was looking at the stats for this when people were talking about like, oh, well, Max Holloway's takedown defense is higher than Tony Ferguson's. It's like, yeah, but Max Holloway's also had more singularly bad takedown defending performances than Tony Ferguson.
Yeah.
Giving up 4 takedowns to Conor McGregor, giving up 4 takedowns to Dennis Bermudez, and 3 takedowns to Andre Fili. Like, you know, Tony Ferguson's never, like, the most he's ever given up was 3, and that's to Kevin Lee, who's a takedown artist on the level of Khabib Nurmagomedov.
Yeah, you still get the impression watching Max Holloway that his technique has definitely improved since those days.
Improved,
but
night and day.
But that technique has not been tested against a high-level wrestler.
Yeah, and so to that extent, like, there is a gap that we don't know, like, how it's going to go. And the thing that I worry about watching Max Holloway in his recent performances and how he defends takedowns, as you say, is like overhooks and wrist control. And he does it really well. Like, his wrist control is fucking impressive. It is a great way to defend takedowns the way he does. But it also means that he spends a lot of time tied up fighting off each takedown. It's not the Joanna Jedrzejczyk steering wheel from outside, Matador, like, you know, adjust and sprawl, adjust and steer takedown defense. It's, you're going to get it on my hips, and I'm going to jump back to the cage, and then I'm going to find your wrist, and I'm going to control where you are able to put your hands, and I'm going to direct you into low single legs that I can limp out of. That's how Max Holloway is defending takedowns.
Yeah.
And it means that there's a lot of time in the clinch for somebody like Khabib to work on changing things up. Like, if he can break Max's ability to control his wrists, if he's just a stronger wrestler in the clinch, which I kind of have to assume that Khabib Nurmagomedov is. He's the strongest wrestler that we've pretty much ever seen in the clinch in MMA.
And arguably the most punishing on the ground as well.
Yeah. Then I can't trust a career featherweight coming up on short notice to have that answer.
Yeah.
There's also a thing, too, where Max Holloway, like, one of the things that was interesting to me about how Khabib Nurmagomedov had so much trouble with Michael Johnson early in their fight.
He didn't have that much trouble, did he?
He got hurt. He got clipped up a few times in the opening couple minutes. I mean,
he got hit good and clean once, and I don't really think he was hurt.
So. I think there was an obvious point, more so than pretty much any other fight, maybe other than the Daryl Horcher fight, where he was just coming back from a long layoff, where he looked more uncertain on his feet than he had at any other point. However you want to put that. But what it was, looking at that fight, was Johnson's ability to constantly push Khabib off the front foot. And to fill the space with volume. He just started really fast with tons of volume and stopped Khabib's pressure dead with it. And Khabib suddenly had to, like, I can't just walk forward on this guy because he's just throwing strikes constantly. And, you know, he nailed me pretty hard. Because when Khabib has to retreat, he's a pretty bad fighter retreating.
Yeah. He's got some moves. Khabib is such a weird striking game where it's like he will pull out a really slick maneuver.
Yeah.
When all the fundamentals seem to be complete dog shit. So
yeah.
But he's definitely like pressure is his friend for sure.
Yeah. He often, when he backs up, he often does it like he'll just have his hands down and he'll walk backwards and then he'll hit the fence and be surprised and have to suddenly shuffle off the fence while getting clipped. And so if Max Holloway can turn that kind of pressure on Khabib and just go out and put pressure on him constantly, that is unquestionably, I think, the best way he has to success. But what happened to Johnson doing that partially, and what happens to a lot of fighters, what any fighter has to come up against trying to do that is that you have to put an insane pace out to do that.
That's what I was thinking, is like after Johnson landed that one really good left hand, it's almost like Khabib was like, okay, I'm just going to let him throw a lot and like keep pretending I'm about to come into range, but respect his power enough that he just keeps letting those hands fly. And Johnson got tired.
Yeah. And that's a terrible game to have to play. And for Holloway's cardio is always great, but is it great coming in on this kind of notice? Is it great coming in with an extra 10 pounds to carry?
Right.
So I don't, the slow kind of otherwise prototypical round Holloway has, where he is willing to just kind of be out at range, give and take, let you pursue him, and to kind of like stop and meet people with counters. I think it sets him up too well to get clinched up, to get tied up, and to have to fight Khabib off him. And if he does that, I don't think he can win that. I don't think he can take over after a bad first round. So I gotta pick Khabib here too. I would, if Holloway can win this fight. I mean, the big thing is if Holloway can win this fight, we need to recognize that that's like he's an all-time great fighter.
The most amazing thing ever. Yeah, that would be outrageous.
Like I've had people coming to me like, I don't get why people aren't giving Holloway a chance, and I'm calling it Holloway win. Like, you need to be surprised, motherfucker. If he does this, this is worth realizing. Like, you don't need to be the dude who's like, I told you. It's nobody.
It's fun to be surprised. I'm leaving my mind open to it because I know how incredibly good Max Holloway is.
Sure, and I think it's possible. I'm not, Holloway's a good enough fighter to do it, but fuck if I'm calling it.
Hell no. Yeah.
So
it's exciting though. It's exciting.
It is damned exciting. All right, odds on the fight. Nurmagomedov opened at -505, spiked up to -422, dropped down to -522, and has risen slowly to -461. Holloway opened at +365, dropped down to +326, back up to +389 or so, and has drifted down to +348. If it weren't for the short notice, if it weren't for the injury, if it weren't for the lack of camp, if it weren't for the huge weight cut, I would say those odds should be closer. At the moment, I'm fine with them.
Yeah, unfortunately, this matchup is just in every way marred by the X factors more than anything else. But my hope is, I said this already on Heavy Hands this week, but my hope, Zane, is that Max Holloway loses a fight while showing enough that it's like the first in a really amazing trilogy between these two incredibly impressive fighters. That like Max Holloway decides to move up to 155 after this. And he's like, well, I know I can get him because I had those moments in that first Khabib fight. I lost, but I had those moments, and now I know how to beat him. I hope so. I hope this is the start of something beautiful. Although, since apparently Conor McGregor arrived in town, it is the end of everything beautiful. It's just very difficult to stay focused throughout this vivisection because
seriously,
the rest of MMA online is just constant reports of how Conor McGregor is apparently destroying the hotel where the fighters are staying.
Yeah. Hopefully the Chiesa fight will still be on. We don't know about that yet, but at least the rest of the card is still going ahead as planned. As far as we know, the Lobov fight obviously being scrapped. I'm kind of hoping. I mean, I'm interested to see if this can be like a turning point. Not the. I mean, the Conor McGregor shit is only going to add to the drama. It's only going to add to the people tuning in, and all that. But I'm interested to see if this can be a turning point for the UFC because they've got 4 fighters at the top of this card that have long had the potential to be stars for the UFC, and none of them have been able to break in and make that happen in any way. And that's a lot of fighters in one place in one card that all have the ability to be really exciting name fighters. And if this card can do really well, if they can show up and put on amazing performances, then maybe you get a sudden new batch of pay-per-view headliners out of it. Anyway, on that note, we should close the show before we get way too distracted and drag on way too long.
Sorry, I'm just looking at the news now.
You can find me on Twitter at These Anytime. You can find Connor on Twitter at Boxing Bush. You can find both of us over at BloodyElbow.com. Give us a like on the YouTube. Thumbs up down there. That helps us a ton. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, MMANation.com, DOTCOM. I'll spell that out. So you get all the latest Bloody Elbow shows, videos, news, analysis, all the things we do week in, week out. We will be back next week for UFC on Fox, Poirier versus Gaethje, unless of course Conor McGregor comes in and throws a bowling ball through Gaethje's car or something.
Can't wait.
But we'll have care don't care if I did it. Heavy Hands, Vivisection, all our normal shows. So tune in for all that. Thanks everyone for watching, and we will see you next time.